Olivia walked slowly along the sidewalk, her cane tapping gently in front of her. The sound helped her know where she was going. Beside her, her guide dog, Rex, stayed close, his strong body steady and calm. Rex was more than just her guide, he was her partner, her protector, and her best friend. Olivia trusted him with her life. People often stared at Olivia when she walked by. She could hear them whispering. Sometimes their voices were soft, filled with pity. "Oh, that poor woman," they'd say. Other times, they'd speak a little louder, their tone almost admiring. "She's so brave," someone would murmur. Olivia had heard it all before, and she was used to it. She didn't get angry or upset. Most people didn't understand her world, and that was okay. But she didn't need their pity or their praise. She just wanted to live her life. Rex didn't seem to care about the whispers either. His sharp ears twitched now and then, but he kept walking with the same steady pace. He was a large German shepherd with a shiny coat and bright eyes that seemed to notice everything. When Olivia held onto his harness, she felt safe. Rex had been trained to guide her through busy streets, around obstacles, and even in noisy, crowded places. But to Olivia, Rex was more than just a guide dog. He was her family. Olivia had lost her sight a few years ago. At first, it had been hard, really hard. She felt lost, scared, and unsure of how to live in a world she could no longer see. But when Rex came into her life, things began to change. His presence gave her confidence. She learned to rely on him, and together, they became a team. People didn't know it, but Rex had a special history too. He wasn't just a regular guide dog. He had been trained by the Coast Guard before becoming Olivia's partner. His sharp senses and quick reflexes were like nothing Olivia had ever seen. She knew Rex was special, even if others didn't. Today seemed like any other day. The sun was hiding behind a thin layer of clouds, and the park was quiet. Olivia loved walking here. The sound of the birds chirping, the feel of the cool breeze on her face, and the steady rhythm of Rex's steps made her feel at peace. But even on peaceful days, Olivia knew to stay alert. She might not have her sight, but her other senses were strong. She could hear things that others might miss: the rustle of leaves, the distant hum of a bike, or the sharp bark of a dog in the distance. And Rex? He always seemed to notice even more than she did. "Good boy," she whispered to Rex as they walked. She liked to talk to him, even if he couldn't answer. She knew he understood her. His ears flicked back toward her voice, and she smiled. Rex always listened. As they walked further into the park, Olivia noticed a change in the air. It wasn't something she could explain easily, but she felt it. The sounds around her seemed sharper, almost tense. She tightened her grip on Rex's harness. "Everything okay, boy?" she asked softly. Rex didn't make a sound, but she could feel his body tense slightly beside her. Something had caught his attention. Olivia trusted Rex's instincts. He had been trained to notice things that might be dangerous. Sometimes, it was something as simple as a car pulling out of a driveway too quickly. Other times, it was something more serious. Olivia had learned to pay attention to his signals. As they kept walking, she heard the faint rumble of engines. At first, it was far away, just a low hum in the background. But the sound grew louder, and soon, Olivia could tell it was more than one engine. Motorcycles, she guessed. The deep, rumbling growl of their engines echoed through the park. It wasn't unusual to hear motorcycles, but these ones sounded close, too close. Rex stopped walking. He didn't bark or growl, but his body became stiff and alert. Olivia felt her heartbeat quicken. "It's okay, Rex," she said, trying to sound calm. But inside, she wasn't sure. Something about the sound of those engines, the way they roared and slowed as if circling, made her uneasy. The motorcycles came to a stop somewhere nearby. Olivia could hear the crunch of gravel as someone got off their bike. Then, voices. They weren't soft whispers like the ones she usually heard. These voices were loud and mocking. They carried an edge of cruelty that made Olivia's stomach tighten. She gripped Rex's harness a little harder. Well, what do we have here?" one of the voices said, loud and full of fake cheer. The sound echoed across the park, making Olivia wince. She couldn't see who was speaking, but she didn't like the tone. It felt wrong. "Hey, lady," another voice called out. "Where you headed? Need some help?" The way he said it made Olivia's skin crawl. It wasn't a kind offer, it was a taunt. Rex's body shifted slightly, positioning himself between Olivia and the voices. She could feel his strength through the harness, and it gave her a little comfort. But she also knew the situation was different from anything they'd faced before. These weren't just curious strangers or kids asking questions. These were grown men, and their laughter was anything but friendly. Olivia took a deep breath. She had faced challenges before, but this felt like something new. She didn't know what was going to happen, but one thing was certain: she wasn't alone. She had Rex, and together, they were stronger than anyone could imagine. Today wasn't going to be just another day. Olivia could feel it in her bones. What she didn't know was that this day would test everything she and Rex were capable of and reveal a strength neither of them had ever needed to use before. Olivia walked slowly along the path in the park, listening to the soft rustle of leaves above her. The wind carried the faint scent of flowers, and the air felt cool on her face. Rex walked beside her, his step steady and sure. She held his harness tightly, trusting him to guide her safely. Rex was always calm, always focused. But today, something was different. At first, Olivia didn't notice. The park was usually quiet during this time of day, with only the chirping of birds and the occasional jogger passing by. But then, faintly, she heard a low rumble in the distance. It was the sound of engines, deep and growling, getting louder with each passing second. Rex's ears perked up, and his pace changed slightly. Olivia felt it immediately. "What is it, boy?" she asked softly. She trusted Rex's instincts. If he noticed something, it was usually important. The sound of the engines grew louder, and Olivia realized they weren't just passing by. They were coming closer, much closer. Soon, the rumble turned into a roar. Olivia could tell there were several motorcycles, their engines revving loudly as they entered the park. The peaceful quiet was gone, replaced by the sharp, echoing noise. The bikes came to a stop nearby, their engines cutting off one by one. Olivia stood still, her grip on Rex's harness tightening. She could hear the creak of leather jackets, the heavy thud of boots on the ground, and then, laughter. The laughter wasn't friendly. It was loud and harsh, the kind of laugh that made your stomach twist. Olivia tilted her head slightly, trying to pinpoint their location. She could tell there were at least 3, maybe 4 men. They were close enough now that their voices carried clearly. "Look at this," one of them said, his tone mocking. "What's she doing out here all by herself?" Another voice joined in, rough and sneering. "And with a dog, too. What's she need him for? She can't even see where she's going." Their laughter rang out again, sharp and mean. Olivia felt a knot form in her chest, but she didn't move. She wasn't sure what they wanted, but she knew she had to stay calm. Rex stood firm beside her, his body tense. Olivia could feel the energy in him, like a spring ready to uncoil. The men started to walk closer. Olivia could hear the crunch of gravel under their boots, the shuffle of their jackets as they moved. One of them spoke again, his voice louder now. "Hey, lady. You lost or something? Need some help finding your way?" The way he said it made Olivia's skin crawl. It wasn't an offer of help, it was a taunt. Rex let out a low, almost inaudible growl. It wasn't loud enough for the men to hear, but Olivia felt it through the harness. "It's okay, Rex," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if she believed it herself. Her heart was beating faster now, but she kept her face calm. She didn't want them to know she was afraid. The men didn't stop. Their boots crunched closer, and one of them laughed again, this time right in front of her. "What's the matter, lady?" he sneered. His voice was so close now that Olivia could feel the heat of his breath. "Got your fancy mutt here to lead you around? Maybe you should watch where you're going." Another man chimed in, his voice full of cruel amusement. "Oh wait, you can't." They all burst into laughter, the sound echoing around the park like a broken record. Olivia clenched her jaw. She hated how they thought they could talk to her like that, like she was helpless. Rex moved slightly in front of her, his body blocking her from the men. His growl grew louder this time, and one of the men seemed to notice. "Whoa, calm down, dog," the man said, backing up a step. But his tone was still mocking. "What are you gonna do, huh? Bite me?" "Don't," Olivia said firmly, her voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside her. She wasn't sure if she was talking to Rex or the men. Maybe both. She reached down and rested a hand on Rex's back. His fur was bristling under her fingers, his muscles tense and ready. The men didn't leave. If anything, her calmness seemed to irritate them. One of them leaned closer, and she could feel his shadow over her. "You think you're tough, don't you?" he said, his voice low and mean. "Walking around here like you own the place. Newsflash, lady, you're not special." Rex growled again, this time louder than before. The sound was deep and rumbling, and it made Olivia feel both comforted and nervous. She knew Rex was trained to protect her, but she also knew how dangerous the situation could become if the men didn't back off. "Control your dog," one of the men snapped. "Before he gets hurt." Olivia's hand tightened on Rex's harness. She felt a wave of anger rise up in her chest. Who were these men to talk to her like this? To threaten her? But she also knew she needed to be careful. "He's just doing his job," she said, her voice calm but firm. "And I'd suggest you leave us alone." The men laughed again, but this time it sounded more forced. One of them muttered something she couldn't quite hear, and another said, "Come on, let's go." "She's not worth it." But not all of them were ready to leave. One of the men stayed, his voice still filled with mockery. "You think you're so tough, don't you? Just because you've got a dog." Olivia didn't respond. She stood still, her hand on Rex, her heart pounding. She could feel the tension in the air, heavy and sharp. She didn't know what was going to happen next, but she knew one thing for sure, she wasn't backing down. And neither was Rex. The sound of the bikers' heavy boots crunching on the gravel surrounded Olivia. They didn't walk away like she had hoped. Instead, they circled her and Rex, their voices getting louder and meaner. "Hey, lady, you should have stayed home today," one of them sneered. His voice was close, too close. "Yeah," another added with a laugh, "you and your fancy dog don't belong here." Rex didn't move a muscle, but Olivia could feel the tension in his body. She kept her hand on his harness, her fingers gripping it tightly. "It's okay, Rex," she whispered under her breath. But was it really okay? She wasn't so sure. The bikers kept talking, their words sharper now, like they wanted to see if they could scare her. "Look at her, all calm like she thinks she's better than us," one of them said. "Hey, I'm talking to you." Still, Olivia didn't reply. She kept her face steady, her head held high. She wasn't going to give them the reaction they wanted. Rex let out a low growl, so soft it was almost a vibration. It made Olivia feel both nervous and brave. Rex was ready. He always was. One of the bikers, a tall man with a rough voice, took a step closer. "What's so special about this dog, huh? He doesn't look so tough to me." His words were mocking, but there was a flicker of doubt in his tone. Maybe he noticed how Rex's sharp eyes were locked onto him, not missing a single move. The man reached out his hand, aiming for Rex's harness. His fingers hovered just inches away from the leather strap. "Don't touch him," Olivia said softly. Her voice was calm but firm, and there was something in it that made the man pause for a second. Then he laughed. "Oh yeah? What's a blind lady gonna do about it?" His words were loud and mean, but his hands still didn't touch Rex. Rex growled again, louder this time. The sound cut through the biker's laughter like the roar of thunder before a storm. It was a warning, deep and powerful. Even though Olivia couldn't see the man's face, she could feel his hesitation. The air around her felt heavy, as if everyone was holding their breath. "Come on," another biker said, stepping closer to his friend. "It's just a dog. What's it gonna do? Sit and bark." Olivia's grip on Rex's harness tightened. She felt her heart beating faster, but she kept her voice steady. "You don't want to test him," she said. Her tone was quiet, but it carried weight. The first man scoffed. "What's so special about this dog, huh? He doesn't scare me." Olivia tilted her head slightly, listening to the sounds around her. She could hear the nervous shuffle of boots, the way one of the bikers cleared his throat like he wasn't so sure anymore. She didn't need to see them to know they were starting to realize this wasn't going the way they expected. Rex's growl rumbled again, louder and sharper. The bikers stepped back just a little. One of them muttered, "Hey, maybe we should." "No," the tall man interrupted. "I'm not scared of some blind lady or her mutt." He tried to sound tough, but there was a hint of fear in his voice now. Rex shifted his position slightly, placing himself even more firmly between Olivia and the bikers. Olivia could feel his strength, his readiness to protect her. She rested her hand on his back, feeling the warmth of his fur. "Good boy," she whispered. One of the bikers tried to laugh again, but it sounded forced. "What, you think this dog is some kind of superhero?" he asked. "You're bluffing." Olivia didn't respond right away. She didn't need to explain herself. But then, calmly, she said, "Rex isn't just any dog. He's trained for situations like this. You really don't want to find out what he can do." The group went quiet for a moment. Olivia could hear their uncertain breathing, the shifting of their feet. One of them finally said, "She's lying. He's just a guide dog. What's he gonna do, wag his tail at us?" Rex growled again, and this time it wasn't just a warning, it was a promise. The sound was deep, strong, and commanding. Olivia knew that Rex wouldn't attack unless he had to, but she also knew he was ready. Rex had been trained by the Coast Guard, trained to protect, to rescue, and to stop threats. He wasn't just a guide dog. He was something much more. The tall man hesitated again, his hand still hovering near Rex's harness. He looked back at his friends. "What if she's not lying?" he asked, his voice lower now. "She's bluffing," another biker said, but even he didn't sound so sure. Olivia didn't move. She stood there, calm and steady, even though her heart was racing. She trusted Rex completely. He had never let her down before, and she knew he wouldn't start now. The tension in the air grew thicker, and for the first time, the bikers seemed unsure of themselves. Their laughter faded, replaced by muttered words and nervous glances. They didn't know what to do. They had underestimated her, and now they weren't so sure if they had made a mistake. "You should leave," Olivia said softly, her voice steady. "Now." The tall man looked at Rex one more time. The dog's sharp eyes were locked on him, his body perfectly still except for the slight twitch of his tail. The man stepped back. Whatever, he said, trying to sound tough. Come on, let's get out of here. The other bikers muttered in agreement, their bravado disappearing as they backed away. One by one, they climbed onto their motorcycles, their engines roaring back to life. The tall man hesitated for a moment, looking at Olivia and Rex one last time. Then he shook his head, muttered something under his breath, and joined the others. As the sound of the motorcycles faded into the distance, Olivia let out a slow breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She knelt down beside Rex, running her hand over his fur. "Good boy," she said softly. Rex wagged his tail, his body finally relaxing. Olivia smiled. She didn't need to see the bikers retreat to know what had happened. Rex had done his job, and he had done it perfectly. The air was thick with tension as the bikers stood around Olivia and Rex. No one moved for a moment. Then, the biker closest to Rex took another step forward. His boots scraped against the gravel, and the sound seemed louder than it should have. He reached out, as if daring to challenge the warning growl that had rumbled from Rex moments before. That was a mistake. Before the man's hand got any closer, Rex sprang into action. It happened so fast that no one could stop it. 1 second, Rex was standing calmly beside Olivia, and the next, he was on the man, pinning him to the ground with incredible speed and strength. The biker let out a startled yell as he fell backward, landing hard on the gravel. Rex's teeth were bared, inches from the man's arm, and his growl was louder now, deep and commanding. His sharp eyes locked onto the man's every movement, daring him to make another wrong move. Olivia could feel the rush of air as it all happened, but she didn't flinch. She stayed calm, her hand resting on Rex's harness. The other bikers froze in their tracks. They stared at Rex, their mouths hanging open in shock. The one on the ground didn't dare move. He looked up at the dog, his face pale. For the first time, the bikers seemed to realize that this wasn't a game. What the one of them started, but he didn't finish his sentence. He just stood there, his hands half raised, unsure of what to do. Olivia's voice broke the silence. It was calm, steady, and firm. "You see," she began, her tone as even as if she were giving simple directions, "Rex isn't just any guide dog. He's trained by the Coast Guard." The bikers exchanged nervous glances, their confidence cracking. One of them muttered, "Coast Guard? What does that even mean?" Olivia tilted her head slightly, as if she were thinking. "It means he's trained for things like this," she said. "Search and rescue. Protection. Obedience. You name it, Rex can do it. He's not just a dog. He's a partner." The man on the ground shifted slightly, and Rex growled again, louder this time. The sound made the man freeze. "Call him off," he croaked, his voice shaky. "I wasn't gonna hurt you." Olivia didn't answer right away. She stood there, her hand on Rex, her face calm. Finally, she said, "You weren't going to hurt me? Funny, it didn't seem that way a minute ago." The biker closest to her, the one who had mocked her earlier, spoke up, trying to sound brave. "She's bluffing," he said, his voice trembling just a little. "There's no way a blind woman's got a dog like that." Olivia smiled faintly, though it wasn't a kind smile. "Am I?" she asked, tilting her head toward the sound of his voice. "You sound nervous." "I'm not nervous," the man snapped, but his voice cracked slightly. His friends stepped back, their earlier boldness fading with every second that Rex held their buddy on the ground. Olivia took a slow step forward, her cane tapping lightly against the ground. "I may not see," she said, her voice clear and calm, "but I can hear every shaky breath you're taking. I can hear your boots scraping the ground because you're backing up. And I can hear your heart beating faster than it should be." The bikers said nothing. The man on the ground muttered, "Please, just call him off." Why should I? Olivia asked. You thought you could scare me, didn't you? You thought I was weak. But now you're scared of a dog. My dog. One of the bikers tried to take a step forward, but Rex's growl stopped him in his tracks. Hey, the man stammered, holding up his hands, we didn't mean anything by it, okay? We were just messing around. Messing around? Olivia echoed, her voice sharp. Do you know what happens when people mess around with Rex and me? They learn very quickly that it's a bad idea. The man who had mocked her earlier cleared his throat. Okay, we get it, he said. We'll leave, all right? Just, call off the dog. Olivia tilted her head, as if considering his words. Then she said, you have two choices. You can leave now, or you can find out what happens when you push Rex any further. The man on the ground turned his head to look at his friends. Do what she says, he said, his voice trembling. Let's just go. The others hesitated for a moment, then started backing away. They muttered under their breaths, their earlier bravado completely gone. The man on the ground tried to sit up, but Rex didn't move. His growl was still low and steady, his teeth bared. Rex, Olivia said softly. The dog immediately stepped back, releasing the man but staying alert. The biker scrambled to his feet, brushing gravel off his jacket and stumbling toward his bike. Let's get out of here, one of the bikers muttered. They climbed onto their motorcycles, their engines roaring to life. The tall man glanced back at Olivia one last time, his face pale and his lips pressed into a thin line. Then, without another word, they sped off, the sound of their bikes fading into the distance. Olivia stood there for a moment, listening to the quiet that followed. She knelt down beside Rex, running her hand over his fur. Good boy, she said softly, her voice filled with warmth and pride. Rex wagged his tail, his body finally relaxing. She straightened up, her hand on Rex's harness. The park was quiet again, the only sound the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Olivia smiled. She didn't need to see to know what had just happened. Rex had done his job, and the bikers had learned a lesson they wouldn't forget. Sometimes, the ones who seem weakest are the strongest of all. The bikers froze for a moment, their tough attitudes completely gone. Their wide eyes darted from Olivia to Rex, who stood tall and steady beside her. The man who had been pinned to the ground scrambled to his feet, brushing dirt and gravel from his pants. He didn't look so tough anymore. His face was pale, and his hands shook slightly as he stepped back. We didn't mean anything by it, one of the bikers stammered, his voice uneven. He glanced nervously at Rex, who was still watching them with sharp, focused eyes. Didn't mean anything. Olivia said, her tone calm but firm. It sure didn't sound that way a few minutes ago. She tightened her grip on Rex's harness, feeling the warmth of his steady presence. He was calm now, his growls quieted, but his body was still alert, ready to protect her if needed. Another biker, smaller than the rest, raised his hands as if trying to surrender. Look, lady, he said, his voice cracking, we're sorry, okay? We were just messing around. We didn't know your dog was, special. Olivia tilted her head slightly, as if thinking about his words. You didn't know, she repeated. Her voice was soft but carried a weight that made the bikers squirm. But you thought it was okay to scare someone just because they couldn't see you. That doesn't sound like messing around to me. We didn't mean any harm, another biker muttered, shifting uncomfortably. His boots scraped against the gravel as he took a step back. We were just joking. Olivia sighed quietly, shaking her head. Jokes don't make people feel small, she said. Jokes don't make people feel afraid. You thought I couldn't defend myself, didn't you? You thought you could push me around. The bikers said nothing. They looked at each other, their earlier confidence completely gone. One of them mumbled, "Let's just go." "Good idea," Olivia said firmly, her tone leaving no room for argument. She took a step forward, her cane tapping lightly against the ground. "Go now. And don't let me catch you bothering anyone else." Rex stepped back slightly, his ears relaxed but his sharp gaze still locked on the group. His calm but powerful presence made the bikers hesitate for only a moment before they moved quickly toward their motorcycles. The roar of engines filled the air as they started their bikes, one after another. As the tall man climbed onto his bike, he looked back at Olivia. His tough expression was gone, replaced by something that looked like shame. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but then he stopped. Without a word, he revved his engine and sped off, following the others out of the park. The sound of the motorcycles faded into